budget. He posted yesterday on X. This is what he said. Elon Musk is right. The Pentagon, with a budget of $886 billion, just failed its seventh audit in a row. It's lost track of billions. Last year, only 13 senators voted against the military-industrial complex and a defense budget full of waste and fraud. That needs to change. And basically, Elon Musk is going to be co-heading the Department of Government Efficiency under the Trump
money got
administration,
left in
DOGE, as it's called.
Afghanistan.
And they have already been putting out comments and suggestions and assessments of different agencies, and that's really what Sanders was referring to. And indeed, what he said about the DOD failing the audit, they did fail it last year. They announced the seventh year in a row that they have done that.
So, Jason, obviously the spending by the Pentagon has been under the microscope for decades. It's nothing new, but it does appear to be garnering some now bipartisan concern and support.
Yeah, that's right. There have been people on both sides of the aisle expressing concern about failing to audit again 7 years in a row, as well as just the spending in general. And some people, some Democrats, Republicans have been on board and expressing support with what the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, has been saying about this. One of those people is Rep. Ro Khanna from California, a Democrat from California. This is what he said on CNN the other day.
Let me provide an area where there could be bipartisan collaboration. I mean, the defense budget, which is nearly $1 trillion, is dominated by five primes. There has been tremendous reporting about the waste, fraud, and abuse in that budget. The Pentagon hasn't passed an audit and has failed the last 6 or 7 audits.
Yeah, so there haven't been, not everybody has been excited about DOGE. There have been critics as well. One of those people, Rep. Jasmine Crockett from Texas, Democrat from Texas, she thinks that the department is actually just going to be, wasting more money with the government with that. This is what she said on MSNBC.
Don't let it be lost on you that they are talking about getting rid of wasting money while creating a new agency to somehow get rid of wasting money, right? Like, it's a joke.
Now, interestingly, Jason, this isn't the first time that Bernie Sanders is agreeing with the Trump administration's intentions. We've seen a lot of folks actually that once supported Bernie Sanders' run for office actually supporting President-elect Trump in this election. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, just maybe a little over 2 weeks ago on November 15th, Bernie Sanders did post again on X saying that he's looking forward to working with the Trump administration on Trump's promise at capping interest rates for credit card companies at 10%. This is something he says he agrees with. He thinks that the credit card companies have been charging way too much. So he just posted that a couple weeks ago on X as well. So this isn't the first time.
A little more bipartisanship on the Hill. Always nice to see. NTD's Jason Blair, thank you. And California Governor Gavin Newsom and state lawmakers convening a special session on Monday to prepare for potential legal battles ahead of President-elect Trump's next administration. The Democratic governor is positioning California as a central force in opposing the conservative federal agenda. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
As California prepares for potential legal battles against the incoming Trump administration, Governor Gavin Newsom is requesting $25 million to strengthen the Attorney General's Legal Defense Fund. The fund is designed to protect the state's policies on immigration, abortion, and climate issues. Assembly member Jesse Gabriel, who introduced the funding bill, pledged that the state will vigorously defend its values against federal overreach. California has a history of challenging the Trump administration, with more than 120 lawsuits filed during his first term, resulting in key victories on immigration and census issues.
The last time this administration was in power, of the lawsuits that we were forced to file against the administration because it violated the law, California prevailed in 80% of those lawsuits and saved our state an enormous amount of money.
Congressman
I don't
Vince
see
Vaughn,
how.
who represents California's Central Valley Farm region, suggested that the state collaborate with the incoming Trump administration instead. Newsom is also proposing measures to counter potential federal actions. Those measures include reviving electric vehicle rebates and creating a backup disaster relief fund. Despite a looming $2 billion budget deficit, Newsom calls the legal fund a crucial investment in protecting California. However, some lawmakers oppose this approach.
We do not need to be going down the path of spending more taxpayer dollars suing the federal government to create an adversarial relationship so we can't take care of the many problems. I know we paint this rosy picture of California. We have a lot of problems, and we need cooperation to fix it.
With a Democratic supermajority in the legislature, the state aims to finalize the measures before Trump's inauguration on January 20th. Christina Corona, NTD News.
So, what may be keeping us from another visit to the moon? We're happy to have on Douglas Loverro, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy and leader of the Moon Program at NASA under President Trump. Doug Loverro, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be here.
It's great to have you with us, Doug. I mean, I guess right off the top, what would you say are some of our biggest priorities as the United States when it comes to space right now?
Sure, that's a great question. It really falls into two main areas: sort of the national security side of things and the civil side of things. Let me talk about the civil side first. I think, as many of your audience members know, but many too Americans don't know, we're involved in another race to the moon, like we were back in the '60s when I grew up as a young lad. The Chinese are trying to get to the moon for the first time. We're trying to get back to the moon for the second time, and beyond that lies Mars. And who will be the first nation in the world to go ahead and land on another planet in the solar system? That sometimes seems like an esoteric kind of pursuit for some people who are worried about putting bread on the table and those kind of things. But it really does affect the dynamics of nations. And at the end of the day, it affects how many people believe the U.S. stays in the lead and align themselves with the U.S., and how many people align themselves with our adversaries in China. And I think, certainly the incoming administration, President Trump, understands this very well. I was blessed to be able to lead for a short time the Moon Program at NASA under President Trump in the last administration, and it certainly is something that is critical for the U.S. to stay involved. And on the national security side, the flip side of that, which is actually where I spent most of my background and time, we are in an invisible war that's happening in space right now, and China and other nations like Russia have determined that that's our weak point, that our space systems represent a weakness for the U.S.'s strategic weakness. And so they are trying to take those capabilities away from us. And our job is to make sure they can't, and to make sure that we can always support our warfighters, no matter where on the globe they're fighting, to keep them safe.
So, Doug, a lot of really interesting stuff packed in there. I'm really curious, why is it that the United States has yet to go back to the moon? Clearly, the technology was there in the 60s. What are some of the key points that are restricting us from getting back?
Yeah, it's mostly fiscal in terms of dollars rather than technical. We decided after the 70s that it wasn't worth economically going ahead and investing to go to the moon. We spent most of our time in low Earth orbit at the International Space Station, which was a great investment for sure. But we allowed ourselves to go ahead and maybe become a little complacent with getting to the moon. In the last 4 or 5 years, the limitation has really been monetary.
How well, Doug, would you say the United States is responding to China's advancing space program, and is this a top priority?
I know it has been a top priority since about 2015. So I served under the Obama administration as the head of space policy. It became a very big priority during that second Obama administration. We added billions of dollars to the budget. President Trump, under his first administration, did the same thing. He created, of course, the Space Force, which was a huge organizational response. But we're still not making the kind of progress we need to make. China's moving quickly. They are catching us and or surpassing us in some areas, and so we still have more work to do.
Doug, you mentioned Trump and his previous administration creating the Space Force. You also see his now working relationship with Elon Musk, somebody who is obviously frequently wearing that shirt, Occupy Mars, SpaceX, a big determination to get to outer space, if you will, or Mars. How do you see this relationship working, and how could another Trump term shape space policy?
Sure. It's obviously very complex, right? We don't know how that relationship is going to evolve over time. I think it's positive in general for the space industry. Certainly, somebody who can articulate his vision of why getting to Mars might be important, which may not align specifically, for example, with mine or with other people's, but we all see a common thread here, and the common thread is pushing the United States further and further into the exploration of space, into high technology investment, into pursuing things that are hard. President Kennedy said it, I think, best back in the 60s. He said, "We don't go to the moon because it's easy. We go to the moon because it's hard." When you do hard things, it props up the entire country. I think it's a fantastic push. Wherever the impetus comes from, whether it comes from the president's own mind, from Elon Musk, wherever the impetus comes from, pushing that technological boundary, at the end of the day, pays incredible benefits for the nation internally and geopolitically. So I think it's going to be a very fun ride as we enter these next 4 years.
Doug Loverro, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy. Really appreciate your insights.
Absolutely. Great to talk to you, Steve.